Okay, good evening, members, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee on Tuesday, the 4th of April. It's 5:30 p.m, meetings in session. And as I say, I want to welcome members. Not quite everybody here this evening, but it is good to see so many faces. I've got no declarations of interest, or should I say, are there any declarations of interest?
No, it wasn't. It was an apology from Councillor Myers.
Councillor Myers?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've also got one which perhaps I should have mentioned earlier from Councillor Dagorn. Anybody else? No. No. So we have two from Councillor Myers and Councillor Dagorn. And I think Councillor Garvin has not been very well, has had problems at home, so it's possible that he'll be sending an apology as well. Okay, so declarations of interest, has anybody got any? No? Okay, in which case I don't have any, so let's move on to the minutes of the last meeting, which was held on the 21st of December 2022. Okay, so we have 5 pages of minutes. First of all, is there anybody with any objection to the minutes in terms of accuracy? No, okay, so let's just go through them page by page. The first page, page 1, anything? No. Page 2, anything? No. Page 3. Page 4, page 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so in that case, I take it that we can approve the minutes. Pretty happy with that? And I'll sign them in due course. So we move on to public participation, but I understand we have nobody registered to speak. In which case, that is a commendably short agenda item. And then we move on to item 4, Safety at Sports Advisory Group, Policies and Procedures and Terms of Reference. Leslie, I understand you're speaking on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this report seeks members' approval of the revised policies and procedures and terms of reference for the Safety at Sports Advisory Group. The function of safety sports sits with the council because we're a unitary authority, and the council formed its first safety advisory group regarding sports grounds in 1996. The licensing officer, myself, takes the role of chair of the safety advisory group. There isn't a statutory requirement that local authorities set policies and procedures in terms of reference. It is, however, considered good practice by the Sports Grounds Safety Authority, who audits local authorities with regards to how they undertake their functions with regard to sports grounds. So the proposed policy and procedure is at Annex 1 and the terms of reference is at Annex 2. A consultation has taken place with the parties detailed at point 10 of the report, and 2 responses were received. The only response is related to the fact of I have given the community stadium its current full name within the draft documents, which is the LNER Community Stadium, and it was suggested that LNER was removed just in case they remove themselves as sponsoring the community stadium moving forward. I'm not saying that is going to happen, just in case it happens moving forward. Within the authority area, we don't have any regulated sports grounds, but we do have 2, I'm going to say 2 sports grounds now, after I've said they aren't regulated, but we do have 2 places where sporting activities take place where we have regulated stands, and that is York Racecourse and the community stadium. So the options before you are to approve the policy and procedures and terms of reference that are annexed to the document, approve policies and procedures and terms of reference with alternative wording agreed by members, or take no further action. The only points that have been updated in both the documents are, they were out of, it's been on my to-do list to update them for a couple of years, but a certain pandemic sort of got in the way. They still refer to the old Bootham Crescent, which was a regulated sports grounds. It's still related to our previous directorate, before we became the Directorate of Place, and it didn't actually name officers, and some of those officers are no longer with the authority. So that they're the updates that have been made to the documents. Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Leslie. I'd like to ask, first of all, have any members got any proposals for changes that they may have noted in reading through these regulations, not policies and procedures, I'm sorry, before the meeting? Councillor Mason.
Thanks. Not a change, but just some questions, if I could ask those now. Obviously, this safety, the terms of reference relate to sports grounds. Is there a generic, separate safety advisory group terms of reference when you're looking at things that aren't sports grounds?
I've also just updated the terms of reference with regards to the event safety advisory group. Now, whereas sports grounds are a regulatory function, the event safety advisory group isn't. That again, it's just good practice that local authorities have one of those. So those terms of reference have just been run past our colleagues in legal to make sure that they're happy. But again, I consulted all members of the event safety advisory group with regards to those.
Super. If there was just maybe like a one line saying separate policies exist for this type of, other event, because when I was reading it, there's some bits that kind of you think, oh, doesn't it cover it or whatever else? And yet the other thing was going to be that bit you were saying about version control, and obviously they've been written in 2016. Just, I don't know if it's an annual review or how often, but just, I don't know how we kind of just document that it is being kept an eye on.
Was that it? Sorry, I thought you had a little list. Speaking of safety, I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Malley. Speaking of safety advisory groups, the last safety advisory group I remember was in 2012, when there was a certain, was it the cycling event? When there was a, perhaps it could have seen some improvement in its organisation of functions. Let's put it that way. You don't need to comment on that. No. Okay. Councillor Malley.
Thank you, Chair. Presumably there's quite a lot of overlap in the membership of the different safety advisor groups. So do they meet at the same time? Because reading these papers, I was thinking that, yeah, it meets twice a year, this safety advisory group. I'm just wondering if there's much on the agenda at those meetings, seeing as there's only 2 premises with these certificates.
When we have the meetings, both sports grounds are discussed at the meetings. So it's split that we discuss. Usually the sport ground hosts the meetings. So we discuss, but we do discuss, both sports grounds are invited, have their turn at the meeting, and we discuss matters relating to them with regards to updates on how things are going, debriefs at the end of seasons, briefing before the starts of seasons and things like that. So we usually have 3 meetings a year, because we meet before the start of the race season and at the end of the race season, and we also meet before the start of the football season. So we usually have 3 meetings a year.
Chair, I have some proposed amendments, if that's all right.
Yeah.
One of them is paragraph 10.1 on page 21 of the papers, just has some gendered language. I was wondering if we could just update that without changing, the substance, just change he/she to they. 10.1 on page 21, I think. Yeah, under rights of appeal.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councillor Malley, I thought you said 7.1.
Sorry, 10.1. Can just he/she is be replaced with they are?
Can I just be clear what change you're asking for?
Replace, delete he/she is and replace it with they are. Doesn't change the meaning of the
I
sentence.
know that's a common,
Yeah.
common form, yeah.
Yeah, that's because it's lifted from the legislation, and the legislation says he/she.
Okay, do we have to have it in the exact same wording as legislation, even if that doesn't fit with our kind of council policy?
No, if Sandra would care to comment on that.
Oh, no, I think it's fine to change it in the
Yeah,
policy.
Okay.
It doesn't alter the meaning of the.
Okay, thank you. We've got that one clarified.
Thank you, Chair. My next question/suggestion is about Appendix D, the useful links, which is on page 37 of our papers. I was just wondering if that list of useful links has been reviewed as part of this review. So, for example, there's a link to the Department of Business Innovation and Skills, which was disbanded as a government department quite a few years ago. So I was just wondering whether it needs to be updated with a more specific link to whatever resources were provided by that government department, or, you know, a new link to whichever government department is now responsible for regulations.
I did go through all the links. I'm surprised that didn't come up, because I always check that the links are relevant. So I will check that one out.
If you go to that link now, it just says this government department doesn't exist, but here's some suggested other departments that you might be
Right.
looking for.
I wonder why it didn't do that when I did it then.
I think
Yeah.
it hasn't
So
been a
went through
government
all the
department
links
for
on this.
7 years or so.
Went through the links on this one and the other terms of reference
Okay.
done as well, which I think there was more links on.
And my other, well, maybe not a suggestion, but maybe a question. In paragraph 8.3 of the terms of reference, which is on page 44 of the papers, it says that the minutes of the Safety Advisory Group meetings may be held as a public record and subject to freedom of information requests. But I was just wondering why not just make them available publicly for the public to find, instead of having to go through the Freedom of Information Act?
They can contain confidential information. So they
Okay.
would have to be redacted, and we would have to determine what could be shared.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I'm sure that you can understand that sports grounds share some very delicate information with us that we wouldn't share with other parties.
Thank you for those questions and comments, Councillor Melly. Any further questions, suggested changes, queries? In which case, are members happy to approve with those changes the proposed policies and procedures? Everybody happy with that? Okay, in which case they're now approved. Sorry, beg pardon.
So members are approving
I'm
option
sorry.
2.
I beg your pardon. I should have said with those changes, and effectively, if I missed the word out option 2, that's what I actually meant.
Thank
Okay,
you.
everybody happy with that? Okay, good, thank you. Let's then move on to the next agenda item. David, I think you're going to speak on this.
Thank you, Chair, members. This report that we've presented tonight is an update in relation to 2 things. First of all, it's the implementation of the Taxi Private Hire Vehicles Safeguarding and Road Safety Act of 2022 and the changes to the NR3 database, which was approved by members last year. There's also a little bit of an additional report on there to update members in relation to the allocation of the 10 Hackney carriage vehicle licenses. The NR3S database, as it's now known, received royal assent back in March of 2022. And there was 2 parts to that act. The first part came into play on the 31st of May last year, which required any licensing authority to inform any other licensing authority if it had information regarding any safeguarding concerns where drivers were dual badged. So in other words, they were licensed in one authority and another. That was implemented by City of York Council. Any licensing authority which did receive information had then to act on that to make a decision whether to either suspend or revoke licenses that they had information on. The second part of the Act required licensing authorities in England to input into a central database. This was instances where the authority had refused to renew or revoke a licence for a private hire or hackney carriage driver. The Department of Transport were to provide further guidance to authorities early this year in relation to a central database which they were going to be using. Members agreed the use of what's called the NAFAN database, the NR3 database, which is the National Refusal and Revocation Database, last year on the 4th of August at a committee. After a period of consultation, we implemented that database on the 10th of February this year, and it's been running continuously. Further information has now been provided by the Department of Transport, and they've reached an agreement with NAFAN, National Anti-Fraud Network, and the database provider under Section 4 of the Act of 2022 will now be centralised as being the NAFAN database. They've now added an additional part to that, which is going to be that if any driver has been suspended in relation to safeguarding requirements, that they will be added to that database as well. And that comes into play on the 27th of April of this year. As a council, we have put procedures and policies in place to ensure that we can be up to speed on using that database as of the 27th of April. That's the first part.
Is that it, David? Oh, no, sorry, questions then. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to paragraph 6 and references to road safety, I just wonder whether you were in a position to update committee on the recent action that you'd taken in the city. Were any cases serious enough to be put on any of these databases? And the particular question I'd like, if you can answer it, is what was the split on vehicles that were found to be in default of various road safety issues in terms of whether they were licensed in York or licensed out of York?
Also, that is within the scope of this item.
Yep.
Thank you.
There was no drivers that were added to that database at that point, Councillor. It was merely defects in relation to the vehicle. An operation was undertaken on the 25th of this month, which was publicised in the press, where a number of vehicles were checked by the police, DVSA and licensing officers from York, Leeds, Bradford and Wolverhampton. The split in relation to vehicles was that in total 31 vehicles were inspected. 8 of those vehicles were from York, 12 vehicles were from Bradford, 5 vehicles were from Leeds, 5 vehicles were from Wolverhampton, and there was 1 Selby vehicle. It was reported that there was 11 suspensions on vehicles which were identified by the DVSA for defects in relation to vehicle maintenance. Out of those 11 vehicles, 2 of the vehicles were from York. There was 5 Bradford vehicles that officers from Bradford dealt with. There was 1 vehicle from Leeds that was dealt with by officers from Leeds, and there was 3 Wolverhampton vehicles that were dealt with by officers from Wolverhampton.
Sorry. No. Any more questions I should ask? No? Okay. Sorry,
Sorry, I mean, it's not an important question. I was just wondering whether suspensions was newly added. I thought it was just revocations and refusals. Is that new and new in the legislation, or is that just new to us as an authority?
Yeah, it's new in the legislation that any driver suspension would be added to the database. Previously, it was just revocations, refusals, or refuse to renew, but now they've added the suspension of a driver's license as well.
Because I think a lot of local authorities have been using this NAF and NR3 for quite a few years, haven't they? So does that mean there's lots of data on refusal revocations? Is suspension data being backdated and added, or is that only kind of newer, more recent?
It's the newer ones from the 27th that's going a bit more.
So in that case, thank you for that. And let's move on, David.
Thank you.
Part two.
Second part of the report provides members an update in relation to the 10 licenses that were agreed at committee. So on the 27th of June, members of this committee considered a report relating to the unmet demand survey for Hackney carriages, and it resulted in a recommendation to the executive for 10 new Hackney carriage vehicle licenses. 3 of those licenses were existing licenses that had been handed back to the council at some point. This brought the total of Hackney carriage vehicles in the city up to 190. Executive agreed that recommendation on the 28th of July. And as a result of that, all 10 Hackney carriage licenses have been issued to prospective applicants that were on the Hackney carriage vehicle waiting list. These potential applicants are in the process of obtaining vehicles, and we're hoping that those should be issued and within circulation within the next 3 to 4 months.
Fine, that seems straightforward to me, unless anybody's got any questions. Councillor Mason.
Obviously, when we made that decision, it was a little bit controversial from the trade in terms of the extra expense in those vehicles, but that doesn't seem to have been an issue in terms of people turning down licenses.
No, it seems to be going okay at the moment. We've had all 10 of them accepted.
It's very interesting in view of comments that circulated at the time. So I think it's positive to know that. Okay, so thank you for the report. I don't think we need anything to do anything other than to accept it. If members are happy. And thank you very much for your work on that, David, and the rest of the team. In particular, the inspection on, is it the Saturday night? It's always a good time, I'm sure, but thank you for that. Okay, we've come basically to the end of the agenda. I have no urgent business, unless anybody's. I would remind members that urgent business needs to be notified to the chair before the meeting, and preferably before the day of the meeting. So if we can work on that basis in the new session, that would be good. This is the last meeting of this committee under this administration. And I want to thank everybody involved. To those members who aren't standing again, good luck in whatever you do, and all the best. To my Vice Chair, Councillor Melly, who's been very helpful to me in the last year. Thank you. And to everybody else, thank you. And if you're standing again, good luck. If you're not, again, good luck of a different kind. And thank you very much for being here tonight.